I never thought the day would come when my own daughter would be ashamed of me. But as I sat there in that fancy restaurant, with all their crystal glasses and polished silver spoons, I realized I wasn't supposed to be there. Not because they didn't have room for me, but because I didn't fit the picture my daughter had built of her new life. But let me start from the beginning. It was a Tuesday morning when I got the message. I was folding laundry, still in my old blue robe, with the morning news humming low in the background. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was from Monica, my only child. My heart. She wrote, "Dinner this Saturday, 7 p.m. at Levant. It's an important night. Please dress appropriately." I remember blinking at the screen for a moment, thinking I'd read it wrong. Monica hadn't invited me anywhere in months. She'd been busy with her new job, her new fiancé, and her new life in the city. Every time I tried to visit, she was busy. Every time I called, she was in a meeting. So seeing her message felt like a little miracle, like maybe finally she was reaching out. I smiled. My heart started to flutter the way it used to when she'd come home from college for the holidays. Maybe she missed me. Maybe she wanted to reconnect before her wedding. The thought alone made my throat tight. I read the text again and again. "Please dress appropriately." I chuckled. That was my Monica, always a little particular. She'd been that way since she was 12, ironing her own clothes, correcting my grammar, pretending she didn't like the thrift store dresses I bought for her school dances. But underneath it all, she had a good heart. I raised her with love, and I knew that counted for something. I spent the rest of the week preparing. I took extra shifts at the diner so I could afford to get my hair done. I wanted to look nice, nothing fancy, just polished. The women at the salon helped me pick a soft gray wrap dress that matched my silver hair. They said I looked regal. That word made me smile. I even splurged on a pair of small pearl earrings. Secondhand, of course, but they caught the light beautifully. Saturday came faster than I expected. I stood in front of the mirror, smoothing my dress and whispering, "You did your best, Evelyn. That's all that matters." It's something I used to tell Monica before every big test, every recital, every interview. Funny how life circles back like that. The drive to the city took almost 2 hours. My old car rattled over every bump, but I didn't care. The closer I got, the more excited I felt. When I pulled up to Levant, I had to laugh under my breath. That place looked like something out of a movie. Glass walls, glowing chandeliers, men in tuxedos opening doors for strangers. I hesitated before stepping out. I could already feel eyes on me. My dress wasn't designer, my shoes weren't new, but I held my head high. I've worked hard all my life. As a nurse's aide, as a waitress, as a mother. That's something no price tag can replace. The hostess greeted me with a polite smile. The kind you give someone you don't expect to tip much. "Reservation for Monica Carter," I said proudly. She checked her list, then led me through the dining room. Past tables full of people in glittering outfits, sipping champagne like it was water. When I finally spotted Monica, my heart skipped. She was radiant. Her hair swept up in soft curls, wearing a gold satin dress that shimmered under the lights. She looked grown, powerful, the kind of woman I used to dream she'd become. But the moment she saw me, her smile faltered. It wasn't big, but I saw it. That tiny twitch of disappointment before she forced her lips back into a grin. "Mom, you made it," she said, her voice too bright, too quick. She stood up, gave me a quick hug that barely touched, and guided me to the table. "Everyone, this is my mother, Evelyn." I turned to meet them. Sitting beside her was a handsome young man. Ethan, she introduced him as her fiancé. He shook my hand politely, though his grip was limp. Across from him were his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Alcott, both dressed to perfection, wearing expressions that said, "Try to impress us." I smiled warmly, but the air was already thick. "Pleasure to meet you all," I said. "Monica's told me so much." "Oh." Mrs. Alcott raised an eyebrow, folding her napkin neatly on her lap. "She's mentioned you're in nursing?" "Well, I said with a laugh. "Retired now, but I still help at the community clinic part-time. Keeps me busy." "That's lovely," she replied, though her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Community work is so admirable." I could tell she didn't mean it as a compliment. Ethan cleared his throat and launched into a story about their recent trip to Aspen. How Monica had fallen in love with the snow. I smiled and nodded, though inside, I was trying to remember the last time Monica and I had gone anywhere together. I glanced at her. She looked so at ease with them. Polished. Sophisticated. Like she belonged in that world. And then I noticed something small, something that stung. The way she kept adjusting her posture, softening her accent, cutting me off whenever I spoke. When I tried to tell Mrs. Alcott about how proud I was of Monica graduating with honors, Monica quickly added, "Oh, it was nothing really, Mom. Everyone in my program did." She laughed. But there was something hollow in it. I sank a little in my chair. The waiter poured sparkling water into my glass, and I tried to keep my smile steady. But I saw it, the way Monica's eyes darted toward my purse, my dress, my shoes. Like she was measuring me against them and finding me less. For a moment, I thought maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I was being sensitive. Maybe she was just nervous. But then Mrs. Alcott said, "It's so wonderful that Monica's done so well for herself. Such a remarkable young woman, so polished, so poised. You must be very proud." And Monica just smiled, as if she'd built herself from nothing all alone. Not a word about the years I spent scraping together every dime for her tuition. Not a word about the double shifts, or the nights I slept in my car because I couldn't afford both gas and rent. I sat there listening, smiling, swallowing the ache that burned my chest. Dinner went on, small talk, polite laughter. I tried to remind myself I was lucky to be there. That she had invited me after all. But somewhere deep down a little voice whispered, "You don't belong here, Evelyn. Not in her world." And that voice, it wasn't just in my head. I could see it mirrored in my daughter's eyes. The waiter brought the menus and everyone ordered with ease. Dishes I couldn't even pronounce. When it came to me, I glanced at the prices and hesitated. Monica leaned closer and whispered, "It's okay, Mom. Just get something simple." Something simple. I smiled weakly, ordered a salad, and looked down at my trembling hands. That's when I realized, this dinner wasn't about reconnecting. It was about presentation. She didn't invite me because she missed me. She invited me because she needed me to play a part. The loving mother, the supportive parent, the proof that she'd come from humble beginnings and risen above them. And I had walked right into it. Still, I told myself, it's just one night, Evelyn. Just one dinner. I didn't know it yet, but that dinner would become the night everything changed. The night I'd hear my daughter say the cruelest words a mother could ever imagine. But before that moment came, I would learn something else, that strength doesn't always look like silence, and sometimes the ones the world looks down on are the ones holding everyone up. The clinking of silverware and low hum of conversation filled the air, but all I could hear was the pounding in my chest. The restaurant was the kind of place where even laughter sounded expensive, where every dish arrived like a work of art. I kept my smile in place, but the longer I sat there, the smaller I felt. The waiter poured wine for everyone. When he reached my glass, Monica raised a hand. "Oh, Mom doesn't drink," she said quickly, without even looking at me. It wasn't true. I enjoyed a glass of sweet wine now and then, but I nodded anyway because that's what mothers do. We let small things slide to keep the peace. Still, the way she said it, like I was a child who couldn't be trusted, burned. Mrs. Alcott leaned forward, smiling in that polite, sharp way of hers. "So, Evelyn dear, do you still live out in, where was it, Monica?" "Maplewood." "Yes, ma'am," I said, sitting up straighter. "It's quiet out there. I've been in the same house 26 years. "How lovely," she replied, though I could tell she didn't think it was lovely at all. "Monica told us she's been trying to convince you to move closer to the city." I smiled faintly. "Oh, she has. But I love my little home. I planted the garden myself back when Monica was small. There's a pear tree she used to climb." "Mom," Monica cut in, laughing nervously, "we're talking about maybe selling it soon. It's kind of falling apart." I froze for half a second. "Falling apart?" I repeated quietly. "Well, maybe a little paint's peeling off the porch, but—" "Anyway," Monica said, turning quickly back to Ethan's parents, "we're actually thinking of investing in some properties soon. Ethan's family has a lot of experience in real estate." Mrs. Alcott's eyes brightened. "Oh, that's wonderful. You must be learning so much from your fiancé." I sat there, my words hanging in the air like smoke no one wanted to breathe. My story about the pear tree died on my tongue. I picked up my water glass, pretending not to notice the way Monica's shoulders relaxed now that I was quiet again. Ethan smiled at her with adoration. I couldn't blame him, she was beautiful. She'd always been beautiful, even when she was a child with scraped knees and pigtails. But back then she'd look at me like I hung the moon. Now she looked at me like a reminder of something she'd outgrown. The food arrived on polished plates that glimmered under soft candlelight. Everyone's meal looked delicate and perfect. Mine, a small salad with grilled chicken, sat in front of me like a punishment. The others talked about stock markets, art galleries, and vacation homes in places I'd only seen on postcards. I smiled, nodded, laughed when they laughed, but I understood less than half of what they were saying. When the waiter came to refill water, I thanked him. He smiled kindly. "You're very welcome, ma'am." His kindness, so simple and sincere, felt like a balm. But when I glanced at Monica, she was staring down at her phone, pretending not to hear me. I tried to find a moment to connect with her again. "Monica, honey," I said softly, "do you remember that diner down by the old train station? The one we used to go to after your school concerts?" She looked up, her smile tight. Yeah, sure. Why? I drove past it last week. They still make those same pies you used to love. Lemon meringue, remember? You'd always." "Mom," she interrupted again, her tone clipped. "We're kind of talking about something else right now." I froze. The table went quiet for a second, and Mrs. Alcott gave a sympathetic little chuckle. "Kids," she said lightly. "They grow up and get so busy, don't they?" "Yes, ma'am," I said, forcing a smile. "They do." But inside my chest ached. I wasn't trying to embarrass her. I just wanted to share a memory, something that reminded her we were more than mother and daughter. We were once best friends. I used to be the one she ran to when life scared her. Now I was just a shadow sitting at her table. As the waiter brought out the next course, Monica laughed loudly at something Ethan said, her voice bright and confident. I realized she'd developed a different laugh, higher, smoother, not her real one. The one I knew was full and warm, the kind that came from deep in her belly. This laugh was practiced, polished, the kind you wear like jewelry. I looked around at everyone. Their forks moved neatly, their words were measured, their smiles perfectly timed. And there I was, a woman who'd worked half her life cleaning hospital floors, who'd saved every penny to make sure her daughter never had to. I'd never felt ashamed of that before. Not until that moment. "Mrs. Carter," Mr. Alcott said suddenly, "Monica tells us you worked in healthcare. That must have been challenging." I smiled. "Yes, sir. But rewarding too. I've seen a lot of people at their lowest. Makes you grateful for what you have." He nodded, polite but distracted. "Yes, of course. Gratitude. A fine quality." Monica's phone buzzed again, and she picked it up mid-conversation, barely glancing at me. Her engagement ring sparkled under the light. I remembered the day she used to ask me to buy her costume jewelry at the dollar store. How she'd parade around the house pretending to be a princess. I used to tell her, "You don't need a crown to be special." Back then she'd giggle and hug me. Now she wore one for real, and somehow she'd forgotten where she got her first. Halfway through the meal, the waiter brought bread to the table. I thanked him again, and this time Monica sighed quietly, like she was embarrassed by my manners. It was subtle, but I caught it. The way she lowered her eyes, the quick glance toward her fiancé's parents, like she was silently apologizing for me being me. My throat tightened. I placed my napkin neatly on my lap and focused on the candle's flicker. If I let myself think too much, I'd cry. And I wouldn't give anyone at that table the satisfaction of seeing that. Mrs. Alcott leaned toward Monica. "You know, dear, I can see where you get your grace. You have your mother's eyes." It was meant to be kind, but Monica laughed. A soft, dismissive sound. "Maybe when I was younger. I think I've changed a bit since then." That did it. My smile wavered. I looked at her, really looked, and saw what I'd been trying not to see all night. She wasn't embarrassed by the situation. She was embarrassed by me. My sweet little girl, the one who used to clutch my hand at the grocery store, who used to fall asleep with her head on my shoulder, was gone. Replaced by someone who looked like her, sounded like her, but treated me like a stranger she didn't want anyone to notice. The waiter came back to ask if everything was all right. Everyone nodded politely. When he turned to me, I wanted to say something, anything, but all I managed was, "Yes, thank you." My voice cracked slightly, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Maybe pity. Maybe recognition. I glanced back at Monica. She was scrolling on her phone again, smiling at something Ethan had whispered. I knew then that this dinner wasn't about family. It was about appearances. She wanted me here to check a box, to play a role. The proud mother. The proof of humble beginnings she'd outgrown. I wanted to leave. I wanted to stand up, walk out, and drive back home to my quiet little house with my creaky floors and mismatched furniture. The place that didn't judge me. But I stayed seated, clutching my napkin, trying to remember that love sometimes means forgiving what you shouldn't have to. As the waiter cleared the plates, I caught Monica's voice, soft but sharp, as she leaned toward Ethan. I told you she'd try her best, she said quietly. She's just not used to places like this. She didn't realize I'd hurt her. I froze. My hands went cold, my heart heavy. For a moment, the sounds of the restaurant faded. The music, the laughter, everything. All I could hear was that one sentence. She's just not used to places like this. That's when I understood. My daughter didn't see me as her mother anymore. She saw me as something to manage, to explain away. And I sat there in that sea of glitter and gold, pretending I hadn't just heard my heart crack clean in two. The waiter returned with the dessert menus, but my appetite was long gone. I could barely swallow the lump in my throat. I just wanted to go home. My fingers twisted the edge of my napkin until it looked like a rope, and I kept my eyes on the tablecloth so no one would notice the tears threatening to spill. But then Monica looked up at me and smiled, that fake social smile that didn't reach her eyes, and for a moment I told myself maybe I'd imagined it all. Maybe she was just nervous, trying to make a good impression. Maybe I was being too sensitive. I held on to that hope like it was oxygen. The waiter, a young man with kind eyes and a clean white apron, approached quietly. Would anyone like dessert this evening? Ethan ordered something French I couldn't pronounce. Mrs. Alcott wanted coffee. Monica leaned back in her chair, looking effortlessly elegant. Mom, do you want anything? I shook my head. No, thank you, sweetheart. I'm fine. She nodded absently, already glancing back at Ethan. The table buzzed with conversation again. Something about wedding venues, signature cocktails, floral arrangements. I tried to follow along, but I didn't belong in that world. I'd never been to a wedding with a signature cocktail. My own wedding had been in a courthouse, followed by cake and laughter in my sister's backyard. I looked at my daughter's engagement ring. The diamond sparkled like a drop of sunlight, and I realized that she was building a life so far from the one I'd given her. I couldn't even recognize it. When the waiter brought the check, he placed it in a sleek black folder in the center of the table. For a moment no one moved. Then Monica reached for it. But something inside me stirred, that old motherly instinct that refused to be erased. Oh, I can help with that, I said, reaching for my purse. Let me at least cover my meal. I didn't have much. Maybe $70 tucked inside my wallet. It wasn't much for a place like this, but it was something. Monica froze. Mom, no, she said quickly, her voice sharp. It's okay, I told her softly. I want to. She looked around the table, then leaned closer, her voice low but firm. Mom, please. Don't make this awkward. Her tone cut through me like a knife. I blinked, confused. Awkward? I'm just. Mom. She sighed, her patience thinning. It's fine. We've got it covered. Something about the way she said we, as if I was a stranger intruding on their generosity, made my stomach twist. I don't mind, I whispered. It's just a small gesture. Monica's voice hardened. Mom, seriously. You're too poor to sit at this table, let alone pay for it. Silence. For a full endless second no one breathed. The words hit the air like glass shattering. Ethan's fork clinked against his plate. Mrs. Alcott's eyes widened, her lips parting slightly. Even the waiter, standing a few feet away, froze mid-step. The world went still. My heart stopped beating. I could feel the blood rushing to my ears, a hot, dizzy wave of disbelief washing over me. Too poor. Too poor to sit at this table. I stared at her. My little girl. My baby. The one I had rocked through fevered nights, fed when there wasn't enough for both of us, worked until my hands bled just to make sure she'd never have to feel poor. And now here she was, looking at me like I was an embarrassment she couldn't wait to erase. I opened my mouth but nothing came out. The words caught in my throat. I wanted to defend myself, to tell her she didn't understand what it cost me to raise her, What I'd sacrifice so she could sit at this very table. But the words wouldn't come. The waiter looked at me with pity, then at Monica with quiet disbelief. I could see it in his eyes, the kind of empathy that doesn't need words. Mrs. Alcott cleared her throat delicately. "Monica, dear." But Monica waved her hand dismissively, not even realizing what she'd done. "I didn't mean it like that, Mom. It's just, this place is expensive and I don't want you worrying about it. Okay?" She said it with that false sweetness, the kind that cuts deeper than cruelty. I nodded slowly, still stunned. I wasn't worried," I said softly. "I just wanted to help." Her fiancé shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe you shouldn't have said it like that," he murmured, but Monica ignored him. The waiter stepped forward then, breaking the tension. "Ma'am," he said gently, "can I get you anything else? Some water, maybe?" His voice was steady, respectful. He was trying to save me from further humiliation, and I was grateful. I smiled at him weakly. "No, thank you, sweetheart. I'm fine." But I wasn't. I felt hollow, like someone had scooped the air out of my lungs. I looked down at my hands, the same hands that had once packed her lunches, held her when she cried, tied her shoes. They looked old now, worn and tired. I heard Monica laughing again, awkwardly trying to smooth things over. "My mom's just old-fashioned," she said to the table. "She doesn't get how this works. Old-fashioned. Poor. Embarrassment." Every word chipped away at the image I'd carried of her. The little girl who used to wrap her arms around my waist and say, "You're my favorite person in the whole world, Mama." I wanted to get up. I wanted to walk away. But I stayed seated because that's what mothers do, we stay. Even when our hearts are breaking, even when the people we love most are the ones holding the knife. The waiter disappeared for a moment, returning with the check split neatly into 2 receipts. He placed one in front of Ethan, and another gently in front of me. I frowned. "Oh, I thought." He gave me a look, subtle but kind, and whispered, "It's already taken care of, ma'am." Confused, I peeked inside the folder. The total read 0. Paid. When I looked up, the waiter met my eyes again. There was something there, respect. Understanding. I nodded faintly, tears stinging behind my eyes. Ethan's parents stood up first. Mrs. Alcott patted Monica's hand. "It was lovely meeting you, Evelyn," she said gently, though her tone held sympathy more than warmth. "You raised a very determined daughter." Determined. That was one word for it. They left. Ethan followed, holding Monica's hand as she smiled brightly, pretending everything was fine. I stayed behind for a moment, just sitting there, the candle flickering low. The waiter returned to clear the table. "Ma'am," he said softly, "for what it's worth, you didn't deserve that." I blinked up at him, surprised. "You heard." He nodded. "Everyone did. But don't let it get to you. Some folks forget where they came from once they've made it out. Doesn't mean they're better than you. Just means they're lost." I swallowed hard, my throat aching. "Thank you," I whispered. He smiled. "My mom worked 2 jobs to raise me. People look down on her too. But she taught me what real worth means. I think you did the same for your daughter, even if she doesn't remember it yet." For the first time that night, I felt seen. I stood up, smoothed my dress, and thanked him again. As I walked toward the door, I could still hear the faint echo of my daughter's laughter behind me. Distant, polished, empty. I stepped out into the cool night air, the city lights glittering like a million tiny lies, and whispered to myself, maybe one day, she'll understand what poor really means. Because that night I realized something I'd never known before. Being poor wasn't about money. It was about love, and the way some people spend it carelessly, like it'll always be there. And mine, at least for now, had run out. The restaurant was one of those modern, high-ceiling places where the music was soft but the conversations were loud, laughter, clinking glasses, and the hum of money. I stood at the entrance for a moment, my thrift store purse clutched to my chest, trying to spot her. And then I saw her. My daughter, Amelia. She sat at a long table near the window, surrounded by people in sharp suits and glittering jewelry. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek bun, and she wore a red dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She looked radiant, successful, confident. My heart swelled with pride, but that feeling vanished the moment our eyes met. Her expression froze, like she'd seen a ghost she didn't want to see. Mom, she said finally, standing up, her voice low but tight. You came. I smiled, nervous. Of course, baby. You invited me. She hesitated, looking around the table. The people with her were whispering to each other, glancing at me. I felt their eyes on my old shoes, my worn dress, my plain face. My fingers itched to hide the scuffs on my purse. Yes, she said, forcing a smile. Well, it's nice to see you. There was no warmth in her tone. A tall man in a designer suit leaned toward her. Is this your mother, Amelia? She nodded quickly, still trying to keep her composure. Yes, this is my mom. He gave me a polite smile, the kind people give to strangers on the street. Pleasure to meet you, ma'am. I nodded back awkwardly. Nice to meet you too. Amelia gestured to a seat, one at the very end of the table, half hidden behind a pillar. It wasn't next to her or even close. I walked toward it slowly, the sound of my shoes echoing on the tile. I noticed how her friend's laughter quieted as I passed. When I sat down, the waiter came over immediately. Good evening, ma'am. Would you like to see a menu? Before I could answer, Amelia cut in. Actually, she's fine. Just water, thank you. Her words sliced through me. I stared at her, confused. Honey, I can order for myself. She turned sharply, her perfect smile faltering. Mom, the food here is expensive. You don't need to worry about it. I didn't ask for your money, Amelia, I said softly. I brought some cash. I'm fine. Her jaw tightened. It's not about that. It's just, she looked around, lowering her voice. I don't want to make a scene. A scene. I whispered, my heart sinking. The man next to her cleared his throat. Maybe your mom would like some bread, Amelia? She smiled tightly. Yes. Bread is fine. My cheeks burned as the waiter nodded and walked away. The conversation resumed, but it had changed. The laughter was forced, the tone a little higher, like everyone was pretending not to notice me. I sipped my water and listened as Amelia talked about her new job, her promotion, her condo downtown. She was impressive. But the way she avoided looking at me, like I was an inconvenience, hurt more than I could ever say. Then one of her colleagues, a younger woman with diamond earrings, turned to me. So, Mrs. Turner, you must be so proud of Amelia. She's told us so much about you. I smiled faintly. I'm very proud. She's always been hardworking. Amelia's fork froze midair. Her eyes flickered nervously, and she gave the woman a quick smile. Oh, Mom, you don't have to. But I wasn't saying anything wrong. When she was little, she used to sell lemonade on the corner. I continued, chuckling. She'd tell people her lemonade had CEO energy. There was light laughter at the table, polite but genuine. For a brief second I thought maybe, just maybe, things were okay. Until Amelia leaned toward me, her whisper sharp and cold. Mom, can you please not embarrass me? I blinked, stunned. Embarrass you? I was just. Please, she said again, her tone pleading this time. Just sit quietly, okay? Her words felt like a slap. I swallowed hard and nodded, forcing myself to stay still. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. They ordered appetizers I couldn't pronounce, dishes decorated like art. The waiter poured wine into every glass except mine. When dessert came, Amelia stood up to make a toast. To hard work, she said, raising her glass, and to the people who helped me get here. She smiled around the table, thanking mentors, colleagues, even her boss. But not once did she look at me. Not once. And when the waiter placed the bill discreetly at her end, I saw her glance at it, then glance at me, almost calculating. She whispered something to the waiter, who nodded and walked away. A moment later, he came to my side and said softly, Ma'am, would you like me to move you to another table? I stared at him, confused. Why would I do that? He hesitated, his expression apologetic. Your daughter said you might be more comfortable dining separately. The table went silent. Everyone froze. I looked at Amelia. Her face turned pale, and she quickly tried to cover it up with a smile. Mom, I just meant, it might be quieter for you there. I couldn't speak. My throat felt tight. You think I'd embarrass you more if I stayed here? I asked softly. Her eyes darted around the table, desperate. Mom, please. That was when the waiter, a young man probably in his 20s, cleared his throat and said quietly, Ma'am, you don't have to move anywhere. You have every right to sit at this table. His tone was respectful but firm, the kind of voice that cut through the noise without being loud. Amelia froze. And for the first time that evening, every single eye turned to her. The silence was deafening. I looked up at the waiter, gratitude and shame mixing in my chest. He gave me a small nod, just enough to say, "You deserve respect." I stayed seated, but my heart ached so deeply I could barely breathe. The rest of the dinner felt longer than any night of my life. I sat quietly while Amelia avoided my eyes. But that moment, that quiet defiance from a stranger, was the first spark. The beginning of a truth I was about to uncover. As that waiter, he knew something I didn't. And soon I'd learn just how deep my daughter's shame and her secrets really went. When the dinner finally ended, the laughter had turned hollow, the smiles strained. Amelia barely looked at me as she hugged her friends goodbye one by one. She was careful to make sure no one lingered long enough to ask about what had happened. The waiter's words still hung in the air like a ghost that wouldn't leave. As the crowd thinned out, I stood there, clutching my purse. Amelia turned to me with that same forced smile. The one she wore when she was a little girl trying to hide she'd broken something valuable. "Mom," she said softly, "can we not make a big deal out of tonight?" "A big deal?" I asked, my voice calm though I could feel my hands shaking. "You asked the waiter to move me away from your table, Amelia." She looked around nervously, making sure no one was within earshot. "I didn't mean it like that. It was just complicated. You showed up looking different. People in my circle don't." "People in your circle don't what?" I interrupted. "Don't have mothers who work 2 jobs to feed them? Don't wear old dresses because they spent their money on their child's education?" Her lips tightened. "That's not what I meant." "It's exactly what you meant," I said quietly. For a moment she looked genuinely ashamed. But it didn't last. She straightened her shoulders, regaining her composure. "Mom, you don't understand. These people, they judge. I've worked too hard to build my reputation here. If they see I come from nothing, they'll treat me differently." "From nothing?" I repeated, stunned. "Is that what you think I am?" Her silence said everything. I took a deep breath and forced myself to step back. "You're an adult, Amelia. You can live however you want. But don't erase where you came from. Don't erase me." She didn't answer. Instead, she sighed and reached into her purse. "Look, I'll call you next week, okay? I just need to handle a few things right now." She handed me a small envelope, cash probably. I didn't even open it. I left the restaurant before she could say another word. Outside, the night was cold and the city lights were too bright. I walked to the bus stop, tears burning behind my eyes. I told myself I wouldn't cry. But the truth was I already had years ago, when I realized I'd lost her long before this dinner. When I finally sat down on the bench, the same waiter from earlier came jogging out the restaurant doors. "Ma'am," he called, breathless. "Wait up a second." I turned, startled. He was holding something in his hand, a small notebook. "You left this on your chair," he said, handing it to me. "Oh," I said, taking it. "Thank you. I didn't even notice." He smiled a little awkwardly. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry about what happened in there." "You didn't do anything wrong," I replied softly. "No, but I could tell it hurt you. I just wanted you to know, you didn't deserve that." His voice was so sincere that I found myself smiling through the ache. "Thank you, son. You didn't have to say that." He hesitated, glancing back at the restaurant. "You know, I've seen your daughter in here before. A few times, actually. She brings clients, coworkers, but never talks about family. I wouldn't have known she had a mom at all." That stung, though I tried not to show it. "She's just lost," I said quietly. "Lost in trying to fit in." He nodded, eyes soft. "You know, it's strange. People like her, they forget the ones who made them strong. But they always find out sooner or later that money can't buy respect." There was something about the way he said it, steady, sure, that made me look at him more closely. His name tag read Derek. "Thank you, Derek," I said. "You've got a good heart." He smiled faintly. "My mama raised me that way." I chuckled softly. "She did a fine job." He looked like he wanted to say more, but just nodded. "You take care of yourself, ma'am." When he walked back inside, I sat there for a long while, watching his silhouette disappear behind the glass doors. That night, as I rode the bus home, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end of it. Derek's words echoed in my mind, about how Amelia had been there before, pretending she had no family. Why was she so desperate to hide me? I thought about her growing up, how she'd always been ambitious, always dreaming of escaping our small town. I was proud of that fire in her. But somewhere along the way that fire turned cold. It started burning everything that reminded her of who she was. When I got home, I placed the envelope she'd given me on the table. I finally opened it, and just as I suspected, it was filled with crisp $100 bills. No note. No words. Just money. As if that could fix what she'd done. I sat there staring at it. My hand trembled as I pushed it away. "I don't need your pity, Amelia," I whispered. "I needed your love." The next morning I decided to return the money. But when I went back to the restaurant, I found out Amelia hadn't come in that day. The hostess told me she'd called in sick. I was about to leave when Derek spotted me and waved. "Mrs. Turner. Everything okay?" I smiled faintly. "I came to give something back to my daughter. But it looks like she's avoiding me." Derek frowned. "Actually, maybe you should know something." He looked around to make sure no one was listening, then leaned in a bit. "Last night after you left, your daughter got into it with her boss. Something about a deal gone wrong. He said something about her using your name for something, a loan or paperwork, I'm not sure. But she looked terrified." My stomach dropped. "Using my name?" He nodded slowly. "That's what I heard." I stared at him, frozen. My name. My identity. Suddenly her expensive clothes, her new car, the luxury apartment she bragged about. It all started to make sense. A cold realization crept through me like a chill wind. She hadn't just been ashamed of me. She'd been using me. And soon, I was about to find out just how far my daughter had gone to hide the truth, and how that one kind waiter would become the key to uncovering everything. That night I barely slept. My mind kept replaying Derek's words. Asterisk. She used your name for something. A loan, maybe. Asterisk. I sat at the kitchen table in my small apartment, surrounded by unpaid bills and fading photographs. The air felt heavy. I'd spent my whole life working honest jobs, keeping my head down, making sure my daughter never went without. And now she might have used me to climb higher. By morning, my nerves had settled into quiet determination. I wasn't angry, not yet. I just wanted the truth. I picked up my phone and called Amelia. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Still nothing. Finally, I texted. "We need to talk. Now." Hours passed. No reply. That evening, as I stood washing dishes, I heard a knock at the door. My stomach tightened when I saw her standing there. Perfect as ever. Dressed in a crisp blazer and heels, makeup flawless. She looked like a woman who'd already rehearsed every line she planned to say. "Mom," she said softly, stepping inside without waiting for me to invite her. "You shouldn't have gone back to the restaurant." I dried my hands and faced her. "Why not? You weren't answering your phone." She sighed, setting her designer purse on the table. "Because you're making things worse. I had a hard enough time fixing what happened last night." "Fixing what?" I asked. "Embarrassing yourself? Or trying to make sure no one finds out what you did?" Her expression faltered for just a moment. "What are you talking about?" I crossed my arms. "Derek told me. He heard you and your boss arguing about something. Something that had to do with my name." Her face went pale. "You spoke to Derek? That's what you're worried about? Not the fact that you might have stolen from me." "I didn't steal from you," she snapped, her voice cracking slightly. I used your name to co-sign a loan. It was temporary. I was going to fix it before you ever found out." My knees nearly buckled. "A loan? In my name?" She swallowed hard. "It was for the down payment on my condo. I didn't have enough credit." "Mom, I knew you'd never agree if I asked." "You're damn right I wouldn't," I said, the anger finally breaking through. "Do you realize what you've done? If you miss a single payment, they'll come after me. My credit, my home. Everything I worked for could vanish because of you." Tears welled in her eyes, but I wasn't ready for them. I'd seen that look before, the "I'm sorry" that always came after she got caught. "Mom, I just wanted to make you proud," she whispered. "I didn't think you'd understand. You've always been stuck in that small world mindset. I had to show people I could belong." I stared at her. This woman I'd raised, the little girl who once held my hand at church, who used to fall asleep on my lap while I hummed gospel songs. And now she stood in front of me defending fraud as ambition. You think success is about pretending you're someone else? I asked. Because that's not pride, Amelia. That's shame dressed in expensive clothes. She turned away, biting her lip. You don't understand how hard it is for me, Mom. Everyone in my field judges where you come from. If they knew I grew up in a two-room house in Mississippi, they'd never respect me. Then you don't deserve their respect, I said quietly. Not if it means lying about who you are. Her voice softened, trembling now. I didn't want to hurt you. I just wanted a chance. Then why did you tell that waiter to move me? She looked at me, guilt written across her face, but she said nothing. Because you didn't want anyone to see me, I continued. You think I'm poor. Embarrassing. But let me tell you something, Amelia. I might not have money, but I have dignity. And that's something you can't buy, no matter how big your paycheck gets. She stood there, shaking slightly, her eyes glistening. I'll fix it, she whispered. I promise. I'll get your name off the loan. How? I asked. I'll talk to my boss. I'll refinance or sell something. I sighed, the exhaustion in my bones weighing me down. You do that. Because if you don't, I'll go to the police. Her eyes widened. You wouldn't. Try me. For the first time she looked afraid. Not of losing her condo, but of losing me. She turned and stormed toward the door. I'll fix it. Just stay out of it, okay? I didn't answer. When the door closed behind her, I felt like the air had been punched out of me. I sank into my chair, my hands trembling. I thought about calling my sister or maybe my friend Gloria from church, someone to talk to. But how could I explain this kind of betrayal? How could I admit that my own daughter saw me as a liability? Over the next few days, I waited for her to call. She didn't. Instead, I got a letter. It wasn't from her, it was from a bank. A collection notice. My stomach turned as I read it. The loan she'd taken, $85,000, was past due. Payments missed for 2 months. My name was on every page. I dropped the letter, my hands shaking. She had lied again. I rushed to the restaurant, hoping Derek might know something, anything. When he saw me, his eyes widened. Mrs. Turner? Are you okay? I showed him the letter. She said she'd fix it. She lied. He frowned deeply, reading the notice. That's serious. You could lose everything if it goes to collections. I know, I said softly. But I don't even know where to start. He hesitated, then said, My cousin works at a credit union. He knows a bit about this stuff. Maybe he can look into it for you. I nodded gratefully. Thank you, Derek. I don't know why you're helping me, but thank you. He smiled faintly. Because my mama always said, when someone disrespects their elders, it's on the younger ones to set it right. Tears filled my eyes. That young man, a stranger, showed me more respect than my own daughter had in years. But as we talked, I noticed something strange. The address listed on the loan paperwork. It wasn't my daughter's condo. It was the restaurant's address. Derek noticed too. He frowned. Wait, that's weird. Why would your name be tied to this place? I looked up at him, confused, and then it hit me. The reason Amelia had panicked last night. The reason she'd told me not to come back. Whatever she'd done, it wasn't just about the loan. And it was tied to that restaurant and Derek's world, in ways I hadn't begun to understand. I stared at that letter for what felt like hours, my fingers gripping the paper so tightly that the edges began to crumple. The restaurant's address, her workplace, printed under my name like I was the one who owned it. It didn't make sense. Derek, I said slowly, are you sure this is the restaurant's address? He nodded, glancing at the front window. I've seen that number 100 times. It's right there on the glass. I felt the floor shift beneath me. But why would she use it? That's not where she lives. That's not mine either. He frowned, rubbing his chin. Could it be part of some business thing? Maybe she listed it as her work address. I shook my head. No. If this loan was under my name, she'd have to use my home address. She changed it deliberately. To cover her tracks. Derek looked uneasy. That's fraud, Mrs. Turner. The word hit me like a slap. Fraud. My daughter, my baby girl, committing fraud in my name. I felt sick. Derek's voice softened. Look, don't panic. We can figure this out. My cousin, he's good with financial stuff. He can check if the loan's connected to a company or something here. I nodded weakly. Okay. Please. Anything. He pulled out his phone, made a quick call, and spoke in a hushed tone. When he hung up, he said, "He'll dig around tonight and call me back." "Thank you," I whispered. He gave me a kind smile. "You don't deserve this." "No mother does." I could only nod, trying to hold myself together. That night, I went home and sat in my living room with the lights off. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the silence. I stared at an old photo of Amelia, 7 years old, missing her front teeth, grinning with her arms around me. She used to love baking cookies with me. Used to talk about becoming a lawyer so she could help people. Now she was lying, cheating, and putting my name in the dirt. The next morning Derek called. "Mrs. Turner, my cousin found something. You might want to sit down." I gripped the phone tighter. What did he find? "The loan wasn't for her condo," he said. "It's linked to a business account. Something called Amara Hospitality Group." Does that sound familiar? My heart skipped. No. Never heard of it. It gets weirder. That business is registered using your name and social security number. You're listed as the owner. I froze. Owner? Yes, ma'am. But the contact number and email, they're hers. My knees went weak. I sank into a chair. So she started a business using my identity? Looks that way. I put a hand over my mouth, trying not to cry. Oh dear Lord. Derek's voice was careful. You need to report this, Mrs. Turner, before it gets worse. If that business owes money, they'll come after you. I nodded, though my heart was breaking. I will. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at the wall. It was one thing for her to lie, but this was betrayal on another level. Still, I couldn't bring myself to call the police, not yet. She was my daughter, my only child. I had to give her one chance to come clean. That evening, I went to her condo. The doorman looked at me suspiciously, but I told him who I was and he let me up. When she opened the door, her expression changed from surprise to irritation. "Mom, why are you here? We need to talk," I said quietly, holding up the bank letter. "Now." She sighed, exasperated. "Not this again." I walked past her into the living room. The place was immaculate, white furniture, gold accents, not a speck of dust in sight. It didn't look lived in. It looked staged, like her entire life. "You told me the loan was for this condo," I said, laying the letter on the table. "You lied." She crossed her arms. "I said it was temporary." "Don't lie to me again, Amelia," I said, my voice trembling. "I know about Amara Hospitality Group. You registered it in my name. You forged my signature." Her eyes widened. "Where did you hear that?" "That doesn't matter." "Is it true?" She hesitated for a moment, then sighed and looked away. "Yes, but it's not what you think." "Oh, I think it's exactly what it sounds like," I snapped. "You used my identity to open a fake business account. You took out a massive loan. You've been lying for months." "I was going to tell you," she said, her voice cracking. "I just needed time to make it work." "Make what work?" "A scam." "It's not a scam," she shouted. "It was an opportunity. The restaurant wanted to expand, and they needed a minority-owned partner to apply for a grant. But I didn't qualify because of my income. You would have. I just used your name to get the paperwork through." I stared at her, horrified. "You used me. You used my race, my name, everything I am, to help strangers make money." She looked desperate now. "I was helping myself too, Mom. I was supposed to get a percentage. It was all legal." "Legal?" I cut her off. "You forged my signature, Amelia. That's a crime." Her face crumpled. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought I could fix it before anyone found out." I felt a tear slide down my cheek. "You already broke it, baby. You broke it the moment you thought I wasn't good enough to sit beside you." She shook her head, sobbing now. "I just wanted to make you proud." "I was proud," I said softly, "until you started pretending you were someone else." She covered her face with her hands, crying quietly. I let her cry, because the little girl in her still needed her mother, even if the woman she'd become didn't think she did. When she finally looked up, her eyes were red. "What are you going to do?" I took a deep breath. "You have 24 hours to fix this. Close that business, clear that loan, and remove my name from everything. Or I go to the authorities." Her mouth fell open. "Mom, please. I'm done being quiet," I said firmly. "You crossed a line." Then I turned and walked out the door. My heart breaking but my resolve strong. That night I couldn't sleep. My phone sat on the nightstand silent. Until around 2 a.m. when it buzzed. A text from Derek. "Mrs. Turner, are you awake? I think something's going on. There are men here at the restaurant asking questions about you and Amelia." My blood ran cold. Something told me my daughter's lies had caught up, not just with her but with both of us. I threw on my coat, grabbed my keys and drove through the quiet streets, my heart pounding so hard it felt like I could hear it echo inside the car. The city was asleep but my mind wasn't. Derek's text kept flashing in my head, men asking questions about me and Amelia. When I pulled up to the restaurant, it was dark except for the faint glow coming from inside the dining area. Derek stood near the entrance, his arms crossed tightly, eyes alert. He hurried over when he saw me. "Mrs. Turner, I told you not to come." "Who's inside?" I demanded, breathless. He hesitated. "Two guys. Dressed in suits. Not police, but they've got that look, you know? Like they mean business." My stomach twisted. "Loan collectors?" He nodded grimly. "I think so. They asked to see Amelia. When I told them she wasn't here, they asked about you." My mouth went dry. "What did you tell them?" "That you were just a customer. Nothing more." I exhaled shakily, clutching my purse tighter. "Thank you, Derek." He lowered his voice. "They're still inside. Want me to walk you in?" I shook my head. "No. If this is about me, I'll face them myself." I pushed the door open. The two men stood near the bar, flipping through a folder. One looked up, tall, clean-shaven, maybe in his 40s. The other was shorter, stockier, with a face that said he didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Mrs. Turner," the tall one said. I hesitated. "Yes, that's me." He offered a polite smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We're with Crestfield Financial Recovery. You might already know why we're here." I swallowed. "It's about the loan, isn't it?" The shorter man stepped forward. $185,000, ma'am. Taken under your name, connected to Amara Hospitality Group. I nodded slowly. "Yes, but that's not my business. My daughter used my identity without permission." The tall one raised an eyebrow. "That's a serious accusation. You have proof." I hesitated. "Not yet, but I intend to report it." He flipped through the folder again. "We've been trying to contact her. She's not answering. Her number's disconnected. Do you know where she is?" My pulse spiked. "No, I haven't heard from her since yesterday." The men exchanged a look. Then the shorter one said quietly, "She emptied the business account this morning." I blinked. "What?" "Cleaned it out. Every cent wire transferred to an overseas account." I felt like the ground had just dropped from beneath me. "No, that can't be right." The tall man sighed. "I'm afraid it is. And legally, since the business is registered under your name, you're the responsible party." The words hit me like a punch. "But she forged my signature. I didn't even know the business existed." He nodded sympathetically but firmly. "That may be true, ma'am. But until the authorities verify that, you're liable." I stumbled backward, my breath catching. I could lose everything. The man's voice softened. "I'd advise you to file a fraud report immediately. The longer you wait, the harder it gets to clear your name." I nodded, tears filling my eyes. "Thank you." They left a card and walked out, their footsteps echoing through the empty restaurant. Derek came in from outside, his face pale. "What happened?" "She's gone," I whispered. "She ran. Took the money." He looked stunned. "Your own daughter?" I nodded, numb. "She made me the face of her lie. And now she's disappeared." He placed a hand on my shoulder. "We'll figure this out, Mrs. Turner. Don't lose hope." But that night, hope felt like a stranger. The next morning, I went straight to the police department. I sat across from a detective, hands shaking, explaining everything, The forged papers, the fake business, the loan, and Amelia's disappearance. He listened patiently, occasionally jotting notes. Do you have any documents showing you didn't sign these forms? I nodded and handed him the folder Derek had helped me gather. You'll see. The signatures don't even match. He looked it over, nodding. You're right. And the email address on file isn't yours. We'll issue a warrant for her questioning. My heart sank at that word, warrant. She's my daughter, I said softly. Please don't hurt her. He gave me a sympathetic look. We'll just bring her in to talk, ma'am. I nodded. 2 days passed. No call. No update. Nothing. On the third day my phone finally rang. A number I didn't recognize. I answered. Hello. Mom. Her voice trembled through the line. I froze. Amelia. She sniffled. I'm sorry. I messed up. Where are you? I can't say, she whispered. They're looking for me. Amelia, listen to me. You have to come home. Go to the police. Tell them the truth. You can still fix this. She was crying now. I didn't mean for it to get this bad. I thought I could pay it back once the deal went through. But they took everything. Who took everything? I asked, my voice rising. The partners. The ones I worked with. They said I'd get 20%, but after I transferred the money, they vanished. I closed my eyes, feeling tears stream down my cheeks. Oh baby. What did you do? I don't know, she sobbed. I thought I was helping us. I wanted to make enough money so you wouldn't have to struggle anymore. By stealing from me? I whispered. There was silence on the line. Then a soft, broken, I'm sorry. Where are you? I repeated. I can't tell you. But I called because I needed to hear your voice. One last time. My chest tightened. Amelia, don't say that. I love you, Mom, she whispered. Please believe that. The line went dead. I screamed her name into the phone, but she was gone. The police traced the call. Somewhere near the state border, but no exact location. For the next week I waited. Every knock on the door made my heart race. Every phone ring felt like it might be her. Until one evening there was a loud knock. When I opened the door, 2 officers stood there. The look on their faces told me before their words did. They'd found her car, crashed at the edge of a ravine. She hadn't made it. I fell to my knees, the world spinning around me, my body shaking as if my heart couldn't decide whether to break or stop altogether. And even through all the betrayal, all the anger and shame, I cried until there were no tears left. Because despite everything, she was still my little girl. The days that followed blurred together. A haze of grief, paperwork, and silence. I moved through each hour as though underwater. Everything muffled, heavy, unreal. The police ruled it an accident. They found no signs of foul play, no passengers, no evidence of anyone forcing her off the road. Just a black sedan, twisted around a guardrail, the same car she'd used to run from the truth. I remember standing at the edge of that ravine, staring down at the wreckage. The wind carried the smell of burnt metal and pine. A single white shoe lay a few feet away from the car, scuffed and muddy, hers. I picked it up and held it close to my chest. Part of me wanted to hate her. Wanted to scream at the empty air for what she'd done. But another part, the mother part, could only think of the little girl who used to fall asleep on my lap, the one who always reached for my hand in crowded places. I stayed like that for a long time until Derek showed up behind me. He didn't say a word. Just stood beside me, hands in his pockets, eyes filled with quiet respect. Finally he murmured. She made some bad choices, but she wasn't evil. She was lost. I nodded slowly, my throat tight. She wanted to make me proud. She probably did once, he said softly. The funeral was small. Just me, a few of her old coworkers, and Derek. I couldn't bring myself to call the people from her world, the ones who'd smiled at her dinner table while she humiliated me. I didn't want their sympathy. They'd already decided what kind of woman I was. As the pastor spoke, I looked at her photo on the easel. Amelia, midlaugh, her hair shining in the sunlight. She looked so alive, so full of dreams. I wondered if somewhere deep down she had known it would all come crashing down like this. After the burial, I went home to a stack of letters from the bank and law firms. Each one reminded me that death didn't erase debt. Legally, the mess she'd made still had my name on it. I spent the next few weeks fighting to clear it. sitting in police stations signing affidavits, meeting with lawyers who looked at me with polite pity. One morning after hours of calls and waiting, I got the call I'd been praying for. "Mrs. Turner," the investigator said, "the documents you provided were enough to prove identity fraud. You're cleared of liability. The loan and business accounts are officially removed from your record." For the first time in months I exhaled. "Thank you," I whispered. When I hung up I just sat there, hands trembling, staring at the sunlight spilling through my window. I should have felt relief, but instead I felt hollow. That afternoon I went to the restaurant. I hadn't been back since that night. Derek was cleaning up tables when he saw me. "Mrs. Turner," he said warmly, "you look lighter." "I'm free," I said softly. "At least on paper." He smiled faintly. "That's something." I looked around the dining room, the place where everything had started. The same place where she'd told me I was too poor to sit at her table. "How's business?" I asked. He sighed. "Could be better. The owners are talking about selling." I hesitated. "Selling?" "Yeah. They can't keep up with costs. And ever since the story about the fraud leaked, some customers stopped coming." I frowned. "The story got out?" He nodded. "It's all over social media. Someone leaked the investigation papers. They twisted it, made it sound like you were the one running a scam." My heart sank. "Oh Lord. I've tried telling people the truth," he said. "But gossip travels faster than facts." I looked around again, my chest tightening. "She loved this place," I murmured. "Said it was her future." Derek looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "Maybe it can still be, in a different way." I frowned. "What do you mean?" I heard the owners talking. They'd be willing to sell for cheap. They just want out. "You could take it, Mrs. Turner. You've got the name cleared now. Maybe this could be a way to turn her mistake into something better." I stared at him, speechless. "Me? Run a restaurant?" He grinned slightly. "You already run your own kitchen better than half the chefs here." I laughed, the first real laugh I'd let out in months. "That's different." "Not by much," he said. "You know people. You've got heart. That's what this place needs." That night I sat with a cup of tea, thinking about what he'd said. I thought about all the nights I'd spent crying, praying, begging for peace. And maybe this was it, not erasing her but redeeming what was left behind. 2 weeks later I signed the papers. The restaurant became mine. I changed the name, took down the shiny sign that once read Amara Dining Experience and replaced it with one that said simply, Evelyn's Table. The first night we reopened I kept the doors open late. The room was warm, filled with the smell of slow-cooked short ribs and peach cobbler, the kind of food that spoke from the soul. Derek worked the counter, and when he saw me glance at the old corner booth, her booth, he nodded softly. "Leave it empty tonight," he said. So I did. That table stayed empty, not out of bitterness, but as a quiet remembrance. And when people asked about the story behind the restaurant's name, I told them this. It's about a mother who lost her daughter but kept her faith. It's about forgiveness, even when it comes too late. Word spread slowly. First a few locals came by, then families, then reporters who wanted to write about the widowed mother who turned scandal into sanctuary. But I didn't care about the headlines. Every night before closing, I'd walk to that empty booth, run my hand along the edge and whisper, "I saved a seat for you, baby, in case you ever find your way back home." And somehow, even in the silence, I swear I could feel her there, smiling again, the way she used to, before everything went wrong. The past still hurt, but the hurt didn't own me anymore. I'd finally built a table where everyone had a place, even the ones who once thought I didn't belong. 9 months passed, and Evelyn's Table became more than just a restaurant. It became a symbol of resilience, a place where locals came not just for the food, but for the story behind it. Word spread through the community about how a mother had turned betrayal into triumph, and soon, regulars began calling me the heart of the restaurant. Derek stayed by my side, his presence steady and reliable. Sometimes he'd joke that I had a knack for leadership, that I was more than just a mother, I was a force. And honestly, he was right. I discovered a part of myself I hadn't known existed. One evening as I was closing up, I noticed a young woman standing at the door. She looked hesitant, as if she didn't know if she should step inside. I walked over. Can I help you? I asked gently. She glanced at the sign, then back at me. Are you Evelyn? I nodded. Yes. And you are? My name is Lila. I work with kids in the neighborhood. I heard about your restaurant, about your story. I wanted to come by and thank you. I smiled faintly. Thank me for what? For showing that even when life goes wrong, you can still build something good, she said softly. It inspired me. I felt a warmth in my chest, a small spark of hope. That's when I realized, maybe Amelia's mistakes, terrible as they were, had created something bigger than the pain. Something that could inspire others. As I closed the door that night, I looked at the empty booth again. I whispered, I'm keeping your seat ready, baby. Always. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and still no word from Amelia. I sometimes dreamed she'd come walking through the door, her eyes wide with fear and hope, and each time I'd be ready. Ready to forgive, ready to love, ready to offer her a place at my table again. Then one chilly morning Derek came running in, a letter in his hand. Ma'am, this just arrived for you. I took it carefully. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter in familiar handwriting. Messy, rushed, but unmistakably hers. Mom, it began. I sank into a chair, holding the paper to my chest as I read her words. She admitted everything, the fraud, the stolen money, the fear that had driven her to flee. But she also wrote about regret, about longing, about how much she missed me and the life she had thrown away. Tears streamed down my face. For the first time in a long time, I felt her close to me again. Not as the ambitious, deceitful woman, but as the little girl I'd loved unconditionally. I folded the letter carefully and held it to my heart. I whispered into the quiet restaurant, I forgive you, baby. And there's always a seat here for you. Derek watched me, his eyes soft. Do you think she'll come back? I hope so, I said. And when she does, we'll start over. Not with the past, but with love. That night, I sat at the empty booth one last time. The restaurant was warm, alive with laughter and the smell of home-cooked food. And in that quiet moment, I realized something profound. Even after betrayal, even after loss, a mother's love is strong enough to build a table that can hold both sorrow and hope. And I would always keep a place for her there. Because some bonds are unbreakable, no matter the mistakes, no matter the pain. Somewhere deep in my heart, I knew Amelia would find her way back. And when she did, she'd finally see what I had always known. That love, patience, and forgiveness are worth more than any money, any prestige, or any fake success. And at Evelyn's table, everyone had a seat. Even those who once thought they didn't belong. The restaurant thrived. People came and went, sharing stories, laughter, and meals. But that empty booth remained, a quiet testament to love, hope, and redemption. And every night before I closed the doors, I whispered into the silence, You're welcome here, baby. Always. No matter how long it took, I would wait. And I would always believe in the power of a mother's love. Because some tables are bigger than betrayal, bigger than mistakes, bigger than fear. Some tables are for hearts. And mine was ready for hers, whenever she was ready to come home. Years passed and Evelyn's table became a cornerstone of the neighborhood. A place where people didn't just come for food, but for warmth, stories, and the quiet reminder that family and forgiveness mattered more than money or prestige. I had grown stronger, more confident, and even the empty booth had transformed into a symbol. Not of loss, but of hope. Derek stayed by my side, running the day-to-day operations with loyalty and honesty. His quiet presence reminded me that people could be kind, even in a world that sometimes seemed cruel. Together we built a rhythm, a life that felt steady for the first time in years. Then one rainy evening as I was locking the doors, the bell above the restaurant jingled. My heart skipped. I turned and there she was. Amelia. Wet from the rain, hair plastered to her face, but unmistakably my daughter. Her eyes were wide, filled with a mixture of fear, shame, and hope. She looked smaller than I remembered, as if the weight of her mistakes had made her shrink. I didn't say a word. I just walked to her, letting the door close softly behind her. Mom, she whispered, voice cracking. I'm so sorry. For everything. For lying. For stealing. For running away. I took a deep breath. Every instinct in me wanted to shout, to cry, to demand an explanation. But I also knew she had come back on her own. That mattered more than my anger. I reached out and pulled her into a hug. Her arms trembled around me. I could feel her guilt, her regret, but also the flicker of the little girl I used to hold close. "You're home," I whispered. "I've tried to fix everything," she sobbed. "I went to the authorities. I returned what I could. I don't deserve your forgiveness." "Deserve?" I murmured. "Amelia, you're my daughter. I've always loved you. That's never going to change." She pulled back, wiping her tears, searching my face for signs of anger. I shook my head, smiling softly. "There's a seat here for you, baby. Always has been. Always will be." Tears welled in her eyes again. "Really? Really?" I said firmly. "And if you're ready, we start over. Together." Over the next few months, Amelia worked alongside me at the restaurant. She learned the ropes, cleaned tables, helped in the kitchen, and eventually started taking on management duties. She apologized to every customer, every employee, every person who had been affected by her choices. Slowly, people saw the change, not just in her but in the bond between us. Evelyn's table thrived. Families gathered there, friends celebrated birthdays, and strangers became part of our story. The empty booth was never empty again. Amelia sat there often, sometimes alone, sometimes with me, sometimes laughing quietly as she recounted old memories. One evening, Derek came over, leaning on the counter with a grin. "You know, ma'am, that restaurant of yours, it's not just food. It's healing. It's hope. And now that she's back, it's complete." I nodded, glancing at Amelia laughing with a customer she'd befriended. My chest felt full, warm in a way it hadn't in years. I thought about that first night, the humiliation, the betrayal, the pain. And now, seeing her here, seeing us both healed in a way, I realized something profound. Even the deepest wounds could lead to growth. Even the hardest betrayals could be transformed into love. That night, I sat at the booth that had once been empty, Amelia by my side. We held hands across the table, a silent promise that we were no longer strangers to each other. "I missed this," she said softly. "Me too," I replied. And as the lights dimmed and the last customers left, I looked around the restaurant, at the laughter, the warmth, the stories shared over plates of food. I knew then that no matter what had happened, no matter the mistakes, no matter the betrayals, there was always a place at the table for love, forgiveness, and family. And as I held Amelia's hand, I whispered, "Welcome home, baby. You always had a seat here." For the first time in a long time, everything felt right. And at Evelyn's table, everyone belonged.